Okay, so everybody's good. We will call to order the Tuesday, February 11th meeting of the Westerly School Committee. Members present: Mike Ober, Tim Kellum, Angela Googles, Christy Walston, Lori Whitehall, and Peter Nero, and myself. Mr. Kellum, leads the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Mission statement: to create an inspiring, challenging, and supportive environment where students are encouraged and assisted in reaching their highest potential. So our first item here, the item is our budget work session. And I don't know, Dr. or Cindy, if you want to.
So our thinking was, thank you, Madam Chair. Our thinking was as the secondary level that rescheduled from last week's school committee meeting, we could start with them and get them on their way. We started with the high school. I don't know if you folks really want to come and just sit at the table here. And Kelly, I'm just going to be that. You have the documentation that Cindy has provided. Kelly will fill in what I missed and help flesh out understanding these other issues. But obviously, like all the other site budgets, it's mostly about staffing. About 80 to 85% of the drivers are in staffing. As we've said before, whenever we look to add positions or expand positions, we look for reductions elsewhere in the staffing. So a couple of priorities, and again, Kelly will help with the understanding of this. One is the expansion of the position that is currently facilitating our senior internships. We really want to see that programming expand as part of our kind of umbrella or portfolio of opportunities that we provide for kids. We have CTE programming, and some of those involve, workplace training and all of that, absolutely. But we have other kids who are not necessarily CTE kids, but are frankly coming into senior year with the credits they need to graduate or darn close to it. And do we want them just signing up for courses that they don't necessarily even want to be in to fill their year when they could be out in the community learning real life skills? So that position was a priority for Kelly last year, and is a priority to expand it to be one other, correct? For this year. We also have in some departments, and I'll just say the math department in particular at the high school, a number of 1.0 full-time teachers, 1.0 FTE, full-time equivalent teachers. And then we have some part-time positions, 0.6, 0.4. And my press to Kelly was, can you schedule the math department without these point positions? Can we just have full-time employees who are here all the time? Can we make that work? And her response said yes. So that's one of the reductions we're looking at, is to eliminate these part-time positions and just go with the full-time staff that we have, ensuring that everybody's fully staffed. There also is an issue that comes up at the high school, is like at the elementary and like at the middle, the competitions around class size. At the high school, whether it's in CTE programs where the numbers are small, a lot of times by regulation and law, or in AP courses, advanced courses like we talked about, where you might have a physics class of just 10 kids going into AP physics or whatever, although we're working to expand that, get more kids in there. There are situations where small class sizes make sense. It's also, the high school is the place where kids start to really figure out where they want to go next, what they want to do. And it's more specialized, and we want to continue to maintain those opportunities. That said, we can't afford to be running classes of 4, 5, and 6 kids. So most of the classes will be in the 20s and that, but there will be some that are significantly smaller for the reasons I talked about. But we've committed to, if a class doesn't have 12 kids in it, it doesn't run. We can't afford to be doing these tiny little classes anymore. So that's where we are with that. I don't know what else, but go ahead.
No, I just agree. I think one thing that is really, really important to me is that internship. Right now, we only have a teacher doing it 0.4, so that's 2 periods. And just to even provide more detail on the hours, you need 23 hours or credits to graduate, 23 credits. Well, after their junior year, most of them have 21 credits. So that means they only need 2 more credits to graduate. And so then the rest of their day, they're just taking classes that they don't really need or want to be in. And they typically cause more problems in the school because of that. They don't have a passion for what they're in. So I think they could garner a lot more skill and knowledge out working, having a job, and learning those types of skills, either before they go to college or if they go into career. The other thing is in the CTE, there's 9 different programs. And without a full-time coordinator, all those teachers will be finding jobs and placements and internships for their own students. There's a lot of paperwork that goes on it, a lot of oversight. And so you're really diluting their ability to focus on their classes. I'd rather have one person that has expertise in that area to do all that paperwork, to find those jobs, to get those kids placed, than to have 9 different people doing it and separating all that responsibility. So that's why that's really, really important to me. I do agree. I've made a commitment not to run classes less than 12. There would be a few small ones, especially if they're intervention classes, like our math lab. Those tend to be smaller just so the students can get a lot more individualized attention. The same way in the reading intervention classes, those are a little bit smaller on purpose to do that. But we do try to have a pretty wide breadth of electives, but we are actually going to be closing some classes next year just because we just know we don't have the enrollment for.
So with the math lab thing too, so it's an intervention, it's small groups, it's targeted for kids who are struggling with mathematics. As we continue to strengthen core instruction, strengthen the math instruction that's happening in the classroom, there's less of a need for that. That becomes less of an issue. If Kelly's successful in strengthening the internship program and getting kids out into the workforce, and they're not taking electives that they don't necessarily want to be any part of, 2 or 3 years down the road, we could find ourselves in a position where we don't need to offer somebody electives to frankly keep some of our seniors retained for the year. So there are long-term impacts to what she's trying to accomplish here with that.
Would this position be added to the high school staff or the CTE staff? Or I know it's kind of all the same, but we have different budget. I'm just curious where it falls.
Right now, I have it under the high school staff.
And so the person who's doing it right now is a special educator. Part of her job is this. We want to find ways to provide the director of special ed with the body she needs to cover all the special ed needs. Have this person go solely to this internship work. She's already doing it. She's already doing a very good job. It's a matter of trying to expand from there. So one of the ways you pay for that is you say, okay, well, then we're not going to have part-time positions in other departments. Kevin or John, do you have anything else you want to add to the conversation about either the comprehensive high school or CTE programming and the budget implications?
As far as the internship coordinator, it would be sort of a natural outgrowth of the high school proper and the CTE programming. It would allow our kids who are in 3-year programs to be able to either start a little bit later or quote unquote finish, but then have that senior year where they're able to go out into the community and have internship opportunities. The individual who is running it is excited and is been in contact with myself and the CTE teachers, furthering her network. She's got a really impressive network of connections, and I think that our kids are ready now. I don't know if I would have said that 5 or 6 years ago, but I think we're in a spot now where that is the case. I think,
It's just the muscles.
good job.
He carries the computer around.
But Kevin, so one of the questions that'll come up from the town council, we hear it every year is, should we be investing in all these CTE programs if they're not, if there aren't large numbers of kids in them? Is it worth it to maintain these? Should we look back to doing fewer things that
So Dr. Garceau, in the 24-25 school year, we had 323 Westerly High School students taking one or more CTE courses. I'm gonna say a little bit of the CTE jargon here, so if you have any questions, please feel free. We classify a CTE concentrator as students who have taken 2 or more courses in a sequence. And that was 273 students in the 24-25 school year. So we have a lot of kids who are participating in our programs. It's not an elective, it's not a group of connected electives any longer. Or if you're RCT program, you have to have right approval. You also have to have the approval of the CTE Board of Trustees, which is another body. And frankly, we are starting to have our kids earn more credentials and become completers as well. That is something that we struggle with. But it is something that's been addressed, and it is something that our teachers take pride in preparing our students for their next level, whatever level that is, whether it's career, whether it's post-secondary. So I would say that the investment that we are making in CTE will pay our students dividends, and as a result of that, also have beneficial impact on our community as well.
the most fledgling of them all is the aviation program at this point, right?
So it's not, yeah, but so we're not even really a CTE not really, we're not a CTE program yet with aviation. But we do have our 3 sequences now. We will be applying for a CTE program in aviation. And I get jacked up about all the programs, but and I have to, be like the dad who loves all the kids, and everybody is even and equal. But the aviation partnership that we have, and this is also something that we've learned, not through trial and error, but through experience. You have to have close industry partnership connections. And we have really started to establish connections with industry partners in the aviation industry. Some are local people who have connections to the high school. And this all started as a senior project a couple of years ago, where a student suggested this. They had earned their pilot's license, and now I'm confident that we will get approval and that we will have kids signing up for it. And it's so much need out there. You've never been in an airport or you watch the news, there's a ton of need in that industry.
I think the people that presented it to the school committee a couple of years ago are pursuing something up at RIDE right now, aren't they, to create?
Yes, and we're also working in conjunction with some other LEAs in other parts of the state, so that we'll have a pretty wide network. It's beneficial for our kids and for their kids as well.
I think one of the other things that's really advantageous to it is we're one of the only programs that our schools are going to offer this in the south of Rhode Island. There's one other program in the north. So the more unique offerings we can have, we can bring more kids into the district that are not already here. Our construction program is really strong. Our cosmetology and culinary, we're seeing a lot of students winning a lot of national awards in those areas. So the more that we can bring students outside of the district into these programs is where we're going to be able to grow our student body. In addition, there's a lot of grants for CTE programs and additional funding. So we do have a really strong 5-year program for this and a lot of plans to help increase our student population through the CTE programs.
I'm just curious, are there any programs that we aren't offering yet, but like you would hope that you're hoping to see that will help us to attract students to this area?
We do. We always have some people who are interested in perhaps expanding our offerings, and that's what it comes down to. It's being able to offer programming to kids who find their passion and are able to come and pursue it. We are looking at a potential music program, which makes sense to me. Our arts program, there's the potential for developing another avenue there. And then I would love to be able to develop our business programs. I think we have a talented person at this point who I love going into the classes. I would audit if we could fit it into our schedule. I would absolutely take accounting. And I wish we could sort of build that into our kids. But we do have some ideas out there.
Oh, Miss Michael's been bringing dental hygiene.
Did you like that?
I'm intrigued by the possibility. I think it would be really.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You should reach out to him. He's
Yeah.
been trying for a couple of years just to even get in for the February's like the month of whatever student dental.
Yeah, no, I do want to pursue that after the break.
Great.
Gonna be awesome. And we're, with some, in terms of efficiencies too, one of the things the high school is doing is moving a couple of departments that are in this building over to the other. What that'll do is provide for greater oversight because there is a dean position that's not being refilled. It's being kind of offset by adding the success coach, which is, not a certified position or anything like that, but a little more support. So it'll be easier to monitor student traffic, student behavior and all that. But it'll also free up space in this building if we want to expand into other career technical programs. I mean, eventually this could be the career technical facility for the Western Public School of this building. We've already got a number here. So if we were going to expand and do something like we just talked about, we would have the space in this building. We'll also have more dry kids. We'll have fewer kids. So, which will be popular, I'm sure.
We'll be happy with that.
Yeah.
Do anybody else have any other questions or anything any of you wanted to add? Oh, go ahead and ask.
I'm curious if there are any students in the high school who are, you mentioned that a lot of juniors have completed all of their, almost all of their credits to graduate. Are there any students who are pursuing a multidisciplinary, like almost like a senior project that could be overseen by multiple faculty in different departments, like a self-created sort of hybrid, with different faculty input? I know that's more of like a college kind of model, but I was curious whether.
Well, we have lots of offerings for the juniors too. So some of them go directly to CCRI and be able to take the few English, the few high school requirements, but a lot more college requirements at the same time. The students can also take virtual high school classes here as well. A lot of our senior classes that some of them may want to take, they do get college credit for, so they can start pursuing that already. All the seniors do have to do a senior project. I'm not sure that this goes directly to what your question was with kind of the multifaceted, but they all do a senior project with a faculty member kind of overseeing them and mentoring them in that. So those are some of the things that we do offer the seniors to do.
Even going along with the internship coordinator position, some of our students who have earned most of their credits are out of the building for a full day. So there's one student in particular who's doing his senior project with the course of Westerly, and he leaves pretty much period 2 through 4 every other day.
Yeah.
Because he's earned all of his credits. Otherwise, he's here for his core classes and then he's in his internship courses. So
yeah.
I think that's what we'd like to see more of, the students getting out and really chasing their passions within our community.
Yeah.
Follow-up to that. We have had meetings with some of our partners who really would prefer to have a worker for the full day. So in speaking with EB and actually our person who currently holds the position, part-time was with us, what would be creative with scheduling, where if a kid has earned, their credits and just needs what they need to get through senior year, load that up on one day and then have the next day, like a blue day be their academic day and the white day be their experiential day. So that's definitely ideas that we're open for. That's actually one of Kelly's visions that she came with last year, even, like you started talking about internships in July when you started.
But the other cool thing about the internships there are students who could be doing them all day, but then there's students who just do it one period a day, or they're within the building doing it one period a day. So it's not just for students who have done everything they need to do before senior year. We can make it work for an individual schedule.
It helps a lot of the CTE kids get their hours. When we start looking at the programs, say at Cheraho, some of their programs have double the hours that ours do. So in order to be competitive, we can now get them out of the building and working in their industries and obtaining the hours they need for their licenses.
That all sounds really good, and thank you, and it's obviously very responsive to like student need, and I mean, I'm somebody that spent the second half of my senior year walking around the school because I had done everything. I went to internship at the end of the day, so I was going to this class, that class, so it just sounds really good that it's grown that way.
Yeah.
I guess the kids have those opportunities, so. Yeah.
So one of the things we'll hear too, one of the narratives is that we're top heavy in administration. What do we have at the high school? Principal, 2 APs.
And we're gonna have one dean, which we're going down one. That was, he mentioned, but I just want to reinforce, was another big reason why we wanted more of our students over in one building. But that dean, we are asking for an extra student success coach. We have, one of our methods of trying to change student behavior is called an in-house suspension. And we also have significantly decreased our out-of-school suspensions. So they stay in school, but it's kind of like a timeout for the day, and we need someone to be there. And the other student success coaches just make sure kids are where they're supposed to be. They follow up. If there's some behavior issues in the classroom, they try to resolve it there and have the student go back into the classroom instead of wandering or being somewhere else. So we do need some more support there just to keep things going well.
We had that at my high school. We had an in-school suspension, but that guy actually, who's Mr. Rough and Tough, but ended up becoming really good friends and a coach for everybody. It really worked really, really well.
Well, you can certainly make some really good mentorships and, student teacher bonding time with them and really make some headway on student behavior in there.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I did have a question. As the student you guys are like addressing the student population and where you see the trends going and what they want to be doing. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I think it sounds great. But as the number of students is going down and you're looking at all of that, when do we look at, like if a dean's retiring and we don't need him to come back because of the number of students, what about like guidance counselor positions? We still have 3. We've had 3 as long as I've been aware, but the population's gone down. Could 2 handle the number of students?
So we just went to 3 years ago. There was 4 3 years ago. Is that correct?
We had one go down to middle school.
I think the I think when it comes to like college planning and scheduling, the school counselors have a very pivotal role in that. I think looking at caseloads is something we can look at, but I think that looking at the work they do and tracking.
So
You do know when you will.
I was just curious.
And tracking credits throughout, making sure students on track, all of that. I think that would be my responsibility.
And we did look, frankly, we did look at the guidance department, but this was the response that high school's a different animal. We're getting kids ready for college, faster, all of it that goes on. We didn't feel like it was a viable option.
Makes sense.
And the recommended ratio is 1 to 250.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I just had like a couple of specifics about the budget, just some of the large increases and I did try to piece it together with your explanations on that second sheet, but can you just explain a little bit about like why the textbooks such a huge jump this year?
Well, we are offering a few new AP classes. And the AP curriculum changes completely and they have to upgrade the textbooks there. So we do provide the students textbooks and let them take them home as part of the materials that we provide them.
I thought the new AP classes that were presented to us several months ago, there was only one that had a very small.
Well,
textbook.
that's probably AP seminar, which would be true, but we're offering AP Gov, which is gonna have a big one, and then AP Psychology is a brand new curriculum too. So those are two sets of textbooks that we have.
And not that I want to cut books, I'm just curious, looking for an
So
explanation.
the AP courses get audited every couple of years, and in order to maintain the certification, you have to do what they tell you to do.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of falls with the CTE and the disposable and everything, but one of the supplies, materials for science is huge increase as well. Is it just the
Well,
needs of the classes? Or
We're
is
changing to a new curriculum that has to be approved by RIDE, and it's called Open SciAd, and it's really a very different way of teaching. It's much more hands-on and student interaction, where the teachers are guiding them through discovery. So, although I don't know all the details, I know that there's a lot of materials that we need to buy for the new curriculum.
that was all, thank you.
One other question, Dave. I know you were talking, Dr. Garza, about CT, but probably taking over more of this building, but it still be keeping the preschool at the other side of the building.
At this point,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, at this point. I mean, so if you look at the pre-K, would I love to have the pre-K students attending in the elementary schools where they'll eventually become K kids? Absolutely, because the transitions would be that, much more smooth. But in terms of consolidating our resources, the pre-K teachers, the pre-K nurse, all of that kind of stuff, it still makes more sense to have them as a standalone.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you again for being flexible with scheduling.
We appreciate it.
And if any other questions pop up for the high school, don't hesitate to email them and we'll get those.
Mark, this question, I haven't keep it on, but.
Yeah.
The, they were talking about positions you're thinking of adding and ones that can go away. Do we have that? Do we have that information?
We have
to
some.
Review?
Yeah, we have
Okay.
some. And some of it, frankly, is still going to be driven by course selections, which is still underway.
Mhm.
So if kids don't take particular courses, that allows us to look at things a little bit. Middle school is not. Feel free to chime in. Feel free to chime in. So at the middle school, and for those who haven't met Ms. Derricks, she's our principal at the middle school, one of the terrific job. At the middle school, they are experiencing student enrollment reductions. There has been talk about the appropriateness of grade 5 being at the middle school. It's kind of the prevent stepchild sometimes. Should it be the elementary? Should it be at the middle school? Instructionally, social, emotionally, all that developmentally, what makes the most sense? We're trying to still work that out. And I don't think it's any secret that I would like to explore moving 5th grade back into the elementary buildings. But I don't think we're at a place where we could do that for September of 2025. So we are talking about some things in terms of grading policy and curricular choices and all that kind of stuff that would result in more of a 5th grade model within that building. So we're working through that. We see this as a phased approach. And I thank Steve for a lot of that thinking on that. But there are reductions in students which are allowing for the not filling of some positions that have occurred in the recent year, either due to resignation or we know are going to be retirements next year. So retirement, people's intent to retire is kind of their business, and so we don't want to really talk about people. But we did have a resignation, and so an example would be we had a resignation in the phys ed department. we're getting by this year. Desiree believes she can get by with one less PE teacher next year. The plan in the 26 budget is to not fill that position. We had a resignation in a retirement announced in the technology department. Same thing there. We're going to not fill that position. Are there any others? Nothing left right there. Okay. I did press her last year to, we look at teams at each of the grade levels and pressed her to make some reductions in staffing and, which resulted in larger numbers of students per team, which we can do, and we still have room to do that in the contract. But, and Des can talk about this now, like, an example is we were just talking about a grade level. I said, well, you've got 8 teachers there. What if you went to 6? And the response is, well, class size would be pretty darn high. Well, if you keep all the teachers, it's going to be pretty darn low. There's no like sweet spot right now, but it's kind of a work in progress. So I'll be quiet and let you talk.
Currently we have 8 teachers in grade 5 and 6 teachers in grade 6, which have higher numbers. The next group of 4th graders coming up to 5th grade is 147 students. So what I would like to do is take one of those current 5th graders, move them over to 6th grade. So we'd have 7 and 7, which would keep class sizes of 21 and 22 for those 2 groups instead of current grade 6 is about 25, 26, which is on that higher end. The tech rotations with that reduction, we're going to have go to trimesters instead of quarters. So we're rotating through one less person basically. And then for PE, they would, instead of the full rotation through the 4 different PE teachers, one being health, they would stay with that one person and have health, a section of health within that full year PE section.
You do have 2 guidance counselors for 670 kids,
642.
642. You got 2 guidance counselors. You've got yourself, an assistant principal, as assistant principal for teaching and learning, a dean.
Mm-hmm.
What other admin or semi-admin do you have?
That's it.
Clerical, you've got 2 ladies up front. You've got an executive assistant. You've got a scheduling secretary. You've got a full-time custodian during the day, and another one at night. About it. And a bunch of aides for lunch and recess.
Is one of the positions, there's somebody in there temporarily right now,
For which,
Dean?
yes, yep.
So is what,
The dean is on FMLA, family leave,
okay.
and will be returning next month, right?
I believe.
So can I ask
Wait.
question about the classrooms for the, I'm looking at the enrollment numbers and they're similar by grade, right? Middle school, so 5th grade is 154, that's gonna become 6th grade. 6th grade is 155, that's gonna become 7, 7 is 169, so that's a little better. Gonna become 8. And then the 4th grade class has like 148, as you mentioned, it's a little smaller, but they're all pretty close. And I'm trying to understand why 5, 7, and 8 have 8 teachers and then it drops to 6. Why not 7? Like to be more equitable, is there a reason that you can't? I mean, it seems like we could cut based on the numbers of the class size, a couple of teaching spots.
So for 5 and 6, that's what I want to do basically is move that 5th grade position over to a grade 6 position
Okay.
to create that better equity in
Yeah.
class size.
You have 7, 7, 8, 8.
7, 7, 8, 8.
8. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see more in the 6th grade, having additional teacher or teachers there. I agree.
But you can't go to 7 in 7th and 7 and 8 because
The teachers have specialties. They have, they're English certified, they have certifications in different areas.
And that's
So
only in 7 and 8.
in 7 and 8, and then 5 and 6 are elementary certified, so we can be flexible with what they're teaching. You're
Yeah.
gonna teach math and science.
Yeah, okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining.
Dr. Garcia, just out of curiosity, I probably couldn't do it this year or even next year, but what would be the idea to maybe put fifth and sixth grade in an intermediate school rather than back in the elementary or the middle school?
I don't know where we physically would put them. The bond proposal that failed in, somebody will know what year. 19, would have called for kind of a mega school that would have allowed us to do that. We were thinking in terms of an early primary school, intermediate grade school, and then middle school and high school. But that didn't work out. Frankly, that would have made reductions in staffing that much easier too, because you'd have the entire grade level in the same building. And you wouldn't be worried about cutting different places. But I don't know where we could potentially house two grade levels. We could conceivably look towards doing it though in the current middle school building, I guess. If we had like a fifth and sixth grade as their own entity, and seventh and eighth as a different, you'd have like an elementary model and a middle school model running in the same building, which is kind of what we're doing with grade 5. I guess we could explore doing it in the same building, potentially. Middle school's so worse. I mean, the kids are they elementary kids? Are they high school kids?
They don't know.
They're
They don't know what they are now.
They're out of their mind. It's tough. It's really tough to figure out how to best meet their needs. Foreign language, French, Spanish, Italian. How many teachers in that world language department?
3.
And that's important to the world language is a graduation requirement, so this supports the kids going into the high school. Especially, and then also Algebra 1 was taught in 8th grade for a cohort of kids to get that credit ahead of the high school.
Music department, you've got the general music teacher, another general music teacher who really is the choral director in addition to that, you've got a band director or instrumental music.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just how I just think my way down the hallways and think about who's where and what do we have and what could we potentially curtail. And I think we've done as much as we can in your building right now.
Question. I know when my son was in middle school, if he took music, he didn't end up taking the foreign language. Does it still operate that way?
So I think what you're referring to is the grade 7, when they had that extra pre-algebra
Yeah.
semester, and we don't have that anymore. We kind of tried to convince that and keep it in only that one grade level math.
Okay. Yeah, he get to the high school and it was first time in foreign language. It was like, oh, yeah, definitely needed that.
How about your mental health supports? Some of them you got with COVID money, and the COVID money went away. We recognized that they were so important that we kind of prioritized them.
So in
What do you
one,
got for staff?
so one social worker put on that, and we kept, we have her at 0.5, so 9.5 getting paid out of somewhere else. So I'm gonna have social workers and 1 psychologist.
Reading specialists?
2. They're busy.
Anybody else, any questions?
Any big increases in supplies, materials, and things you need or anything like that?
I did have a request for an increase in, field trip monies, as, you know, everything is more expensive right now, and, we're kind of always looking for extra money to kind of cover some. So that's with my request.
And
That is an increase in like every school line. Did we not have them budgeted before, or is it really that much?
No, we have them. We didn't do them obviously during the COVID years, but we have it budgeted. And that budgeting for field trips wasn't a thing when I was principal, kids would, field trips $10, bringing you $10 in your commission.
Right, right.
But when the law changed and that bar kids from participating in a field trip due to financial issues, and we couldn't compel them to fundraise, some districts decided to start budgeting for it. So we did. But she's got 4 grade levels there, and a trip like, the Lake Compound trip is like $8,000, right? And we budget 10.
10 for the building.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, so nobody gets to go on a field trip until you're in eighth grade, or we start to add more money, or you go to the week from time to time and they help subsidize some things, so. So,
Are you adding a custodian at the middle school too? Is that correct?
We're adding one in total,
One in total, okay, got it. All
and
right.
that was when we reduced the substitute line.
Gotcha.
We're also adding a student success coach at the middle school for in-school suspension.
although I'll remind, in many schools, the in-school suspension room is staffed by teachers doing a duty. That would be a good method on that position.
So just out of curiosity, since sixth grade is somewhat shorthanded, or I don't know how you want to put that, this year, short staff. Is there a way to accommodate that in the rest of the year, or they just have to wait till next year?
I think the only way we could expand that is to hire a teacher and submit to that grade level now, but I mean, we're in February. They're making it work. They're not always happy about having to make it work, but that's where we are for now.
I just didn't know if it was something that like a sub could come in and do for the rest of the year type thing.
That would mean that you would have to reteam the number of students. So that they would kind of change teams.
It'd be very
Which is,
disruptive. to
it's
students.
disruptive to them.
Okay.
Not that I don't condone decreasing class sizes, but.
Anything else, Ms. Derricks? Again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to email them or we'll get you your responses.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
All three elementaries at the same time, raise my hand.
If you go to the drive,
Because then you can just go through each meeting.
yourself.
Right. It's too much.
Oh, good.
Got it. Okay, we like it, so I'll make it easy.
So the elementary principals do operate, in the same way they operate as a team, almost all the time, which is great. They, as we've discussed, are looking for opportunities to, be as efficient as they possibly can. And the, declining enrollment that we see in kindergarten is coming into the elementary buildings. We had the conversations last year about making some reductions. The budget that we'll be presenting to you in a couple of weeks, will include some proposed reductions. There were also reductions, we'll remind, that were made last year, but then before the budget went to town manager, the school committee voted to reinsert those positions, but they're not in the budget. They were paid for out of fund balance. So, currently, based on enrollments across the elementary, we are looking at the ability, based on the contract and what we believe are manageable and reasonable class sizes, of making, 2 reductions at the grade 1 level, 1 reduction at the grade 2 level, and 1 reduction at the grade 3 level. There are no retirements that we're aware of at this time at the elementary level. there are no significant changes in terms of materials or anything like that, the elementary that's coming to mind right now, right? So if the elementary principals want to just speak to where we are and what's what, or answer any questions, we can certainly do that. In addition to classroom teachers, you should know that we schedule, whether you call them specials or itinerants or whatever you call, the music teacher, the art teacher, librarian, PE and health, world language, which is less Spanish at the elementary level. We did last year reduce a librarian position. So that person is split over all three schools. And it was when Mr. Johnson retired that we just didn't fill his position, right? He went to Coventry, and so now we just have Ben and we have 2 music over the 3 schools, 2 librarians over the 3 schools. Each building has a full-time nurse. Each building has full-time clerical staff. But anything else you'd like to discuss? Yeah.
The positions are restored, but mostly at State Street.
You're 5 across.
It was about-
There was 2,
You had 2?
I had 2.
Yeah, so yes, it was mostly State Street.
And so can I ask, it's both, are those positions that you feel you need to operate, or is there something that you would have preferred to have? I mean, what is it, I guess, because you guys know.
It is appropriate to have the staff at State Street, so I don't want to, they're great people and great workers, but fiscally, responsibly, it is appropriate to have the position.
But last year when we had this conversation, Tim, the elementary principals were feeling very strongly that they needed math intervention support. They needed math interventionists in their building. And we asked them repeatedly through the fall and winter, even more so than smaller class size. And they kept saying, yeah, that's our priority. So that's how we ended up where we did last year. And it still continues to be a priority, and I think the principals would confirm that it's paying dividends, it's really paying dividends. So it's not, as I've said many times, it's not always about small class size. It's about those things that make the classes more effective, makes them more successful.
And then just as a follow-up to that, do you feel like those supports are represented well in the budget that have been presented? Or do you feel like that's adequate if those supports are in there?
Yes, definitely the math position for State Street, it's appropriate pay number that we have for students who need that support. We were able also last year to increase our social emotional learning support staff by 0.5 at State Street. We're scraping by with 1.5. You know, those needs are definitely a priority. It's working at the moment.
But you take another social worker, how do you?
Oh, yeah, I would increase that to 2.0.
Any differences in the level of support needed in your building, seeing as you're kind of the MLL building right now this time, and you're the building with the highest percentage of socioeconomic issues?
The way that we're functioning this year with, I have a full-time mental health physician and I also have a full-time social worker, has had a positive impact on our students. And with the math interventionists, we're seeing, when we do our data days, we're seeing increases in closing the gap for math. Reading as well, we're moving, in a really good direction. So I just would love to just keep everything the way it is at the building.
Any thoughts from the Paula or Steve about Dunn's and need there?
The other 0.5 social worker. that
With me
are
and Dunn's, yeah.
Dunn's.
And, we are all kind of holding our own. It's a new experience for me being at the elementary. But, I think having more supports in the mental health and social emotional is crucial at this time. For me, seeing it as a kindergartner coming in and some of the struggles was a real eye opener for me. but we are able to maintain. We all kind of work together, so if somebody is out, I'm very fortunate to be able to pick up the phone and say, Audrey, I might need some support. My 0.5 social worker is not here. Can, if I need you, can I call? So we work really well together in that regards, but the day-to-day operation at Duskblers is very solid. It's to Steve and his staff. It's a pleasure working there every day.
So if Audrey cuts her staff, would you still be able to make that phone call based on what she's asking for now?
It would be a classroom teacher cut, so yeah.
Yeah, the mental health staff, I would be able to.
Okay. And she said that she didn't want to make any changes. I know there was teachers that were cut last year that were funded by fund balance. Are any of hers, those educators?
No,
No.
no, we're talking about different grade levels. They come in waves.
I know, but a cut for grade, are you talking for grade level
Um,
cuts or for mental health?
no, just like in the grade level, you were saying that you wouldn't really want to change anything as far as your school, right? Or did I miss that?
Right, but if the class size is warranted, fiscally that we drop a class, then I would support that because it's fiscally responsible.
But like Audrey, you take a social worker, right? Heartbeat,
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah, mental health or keeping my,
a psychologist.
yeah, because I only have 2 days of a school psychologist. So she definitely, she's spread through 3 buildings this year, so it's tough.
Yeah, I think over the last 3 budgets, that's been kind of the theme that's gone through from high school all the way down to elementary, is those supports.
Kids are in a different place. We've got a lot more kids at the elementary level, especially struggling, like we never saw 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And particularly since the pandemic. There's some kids that are coming in really hurting. It's a real challenge.
The positions, so the 5 positions that are being proposed to be cut, there's 2 grade 1, 1 grade 2, 1 grade 3. Where are those coming? Can I ask which schools they're coming from?
I'd rather be able to finalize that
Okay.
because we're looking at, one of the things we have is we have families that request to attend the school rather than the school. And we want to make sure we're massaging this correctly, so if they hold off on that, that would be appreciated.
And by removing those 4, we put 5 back last year with fund budget. So, but it still looks like all 3 elementary school budgets aren't through the roof. We're in good shape, right?
Well, Cindy, if you want to speak to the 5 versus 4 issue, Ms. Nichols asking about, so we had 5 out last year. They voted to put 5 in with fund balance.
With fund balance, so
We're
we,
looking to take 4 back out.
so for this fiscal year, we have fund balance as a revenue line item. And then in the expense, it includes those teaching positions that the fund balance was used for. In the 26 proposed budget, currently fund balance is removed from revenue and we have just 4 positions removed at the grade level at this point.
But this isn't 5 and then 4 more.
No, this is 4 in total.
Okay.
Because the way I'm looking at the 3 separate elementary school, like site budgets that we got, their percentage increases are very conservative. So right, somehow, somewhere it's balancing out in that one teacher that maybe we're keeping into the budget doesn't seem to be throwing anything way off at this point.
And there was also a reallocation with transportation, so there's some differences there.
Yep, okay.
But once I produce the entire FTE schedule, you'll be able to see it by position in total.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
What is the admin? Yes.
So
At all the
each of the
schools.
elementaries has just the principal. There are no assistant principals, there are no deans. These are other reductions that we made in recent years, though. there used to be a dean of teaching and learning at each building. I guess it was 2 years ago, we went to having two cover the three buildings. And then last year, we went in to sustain those. So what we have now is the coach position that Steve talked about as being funded through grants. And we have we have the math interventions. Right, and how many? Is it one per building now? Or we're splitting?
No, we're not splitting, so one of mine is funded through the Title I,
Right,
and then one is in the general.
you're able to do it. So if Jen were to have two, we'd be considered supplanting for one of them out of Title I. So we can pay for one out of Title I, and the district can pick up the tab for the other one. But if she has them and Audrey doesn't, or vice versa, then we get into issues with Title I. Clerical staff, there's full-time secretary, and basically that's it, right? Executive assistant, and your, parent liaisons.
And every school has one, or just, does Springbrook have one?
Yeah, a parent liaison?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the parent liaison's 20 hours a week, so it's not a full-time
Yeah, okay.
position.
Grant funded.
Grant funded.
Anything ladies want to chat?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We did do a standing O for Mike. You heard that the other night. And I was trying to mention that he's got the best hipster beers in the district. He's selling craft beer or pup crowds.
Well, we have a little,
Thanks, Audrey.
break. Can I ask one question? Kind of in general, I noticed on all the, all the school budgets, the electronic, and maybe this is a conversation for like the school committee as a regular agenda topic, but the electronic textbooks keep increasing every year. And we keep talking about how bad it is for students to be on screen time and doing all that. I wonder at some point if we need to take a look at some of the research that's coming out about the effectiveness of.
We do that.
Yeah, just saw
I think the reality is that it's a mix. And if you're using digitally based resources, whether they're on the computer or whatever, those can be updated in real time. If we have to turn over and buy new types of textbooks like we're buying, you heard about that earlier, that comes with a significant expense. Screen time is a concern, but the bigger concern is non-instructional screen time, from my standpoint. So it's a balancing act, and we're still trying to work through that. If it's well taken.
To clarify though, for example, you have a textbook item for accelerated reader. Those are students that are taking a quiz for battle of the books and book there. So it's not necessarily like an electronic textbook, it's an online, it's just a subscription.
Yeah.
Program.
Yeah, it's the.
What drives your budget, Mike? Tell the nice people.
There are some significant drivers to my budget. I mean, starting off, like, you can grandfather in that door, right? You can't grandfather in technology, right? Kids can only kick that between 73. Technology can kick 24/7 from people internationally, right? So some of my technology, you just can't do it. It doesn't live forever, right? So there are two big drivers to my budget. One is the software budget. The other one is the other tech services, right? So the other tech services, the big piece, something called the business impact analysis. And what it is that it's a quantitative risk analysis, which provides you a monetary value. So how much is the cost for your network to be down? How much does it cost if the HVAC is packed in your frozen pipes, right? Risk is a spectrum, right? Put simply, you don't put $1 million fence around a $100 donkey, right? Like you have USDA choice and you have WAGU A5. We're not going to pay for WAGU A5, right? But we know we can't afford just to do a USD choice, right? So there's a spectrum here, right? This BIA, business impact analysis, will actually go through our policies, our practices, our procedures in the environment that we have risk in, right? We have cybersecurity risks, we have physical weather related risks, right? So it's a process of going through our departments to say like, where on this spectrum should we be? Right? Like, we're not gonna spend $1 billion so that we don't have something that ever happen, if the likelihood of that happening is never. Right? So the biggest driver here is that BIA, which you're gonna see is that $50,000 price tag for like the 76% increase, right? One of the roles I do have is that I'm the K-12 representative on the State of Rhode Island Cyber Grant Committee, where we have federal funding from FEMA. We can actually submit some of my stuff through that process. The only dilemma is that it could take 6 to 12 months to get funding, if funding exists then, right? So we still have these systematic risks. Pushing them off means we have to accept them. And accepting them could be as drastic as the network going down. Like, and how long can we sustain the network going down? If the phones are off for 10 minutes, that's fine. If the phones are off for a week, what are we doing? Right? It's an organizational risk. It's not just a technology risk. This BIA will actually tell you if the phones are down, it will cost you $100,000. Moving people, moving kids, shifting classrooms. Well, if we pay 50, right, we avoided that cost for 2 years, right? But how do you put a dollar amount on that? And that's what the BIA does.
We spend a great deal of time talking about physical threats in the buildings and everything, but the digital threats and the threats to our networks could absolutely cripple us. We had that, you're aware of the thing we had at Power School last month, but that was just somebody hacked into their system, which is out on the cloud, didn't really impact us directly. But a direct hit to us, which happens to districts throughout the country, and somebody grabs all of your data and holds it ransom, and they basically cripples your district for until you pay it or longer. What is it worth to guard against that? It's Mike's very, very interested in this stuff, much like we are with physical plant, but he's the guy in Rhode Island. And what do you want us to, what are we willing to invest to protect against that kind of threat? And he knows that stuff better than anyone.
I think it's top priority to make sure that our students' information is safe and, you know, we shouldn't have people, random people, whoever, accessing or holding for ransom. And I mean, it's one thing to have, as an adult, your personal information stolen and having to file whatever with credit reports and all these things, but your child, you know, that's a huge
like a
concern.
pre-K student, right? So like if we were breached, right, not the Power School, we have student data here on our servers, right, in our Google. If we were breached, naturally we have to report that. In the state of Rhode Island, if a student's name, first, last, and birth date is taken, for the next, up until they're 18 years old, you have to provide credit monitoring for them, right? So like every single kid, it's gonna be 15, 14, 13. So what is the cost for providing identity monitoring versus what is the cost to mitigate it, right? And then you find that spread, right? You're trying to put something in control to prevent that thing. The thing is that something will happen, right? Regardless of what we do, right? But it's how quickly can you recover from it? So there is no business operation issue, right? Like we had the fire sprinkler go off, right? In our data center, just coming out of COVID, it was the greatest time, right? We're able to shoestring it, right? Since then, we've actually bought additional equipment and it just sits, which sounds terrible, but it's actually great because for whatever reason, a tsunami is that site, right? We have it in the middle school now. But the likelihood of a tsunami happening is 0, right? So what are you willing to pay, right? If the internet goes down for 3 minutes, you teach for millennia, right? If the internet goes down with electronic textbooks, what are you doing for a week? What if that pushes into 2 weeks? What are we doing to support that, right? So like, I would never say, let's buy another internet connection because it costs 16 grand a year. If you only have the chance of it going down is 1%, it's not worth the business case for us to do that. Like we don't do financial transactions, right? So we don't need immediate recoverability, right? We can accept the risk of like 2 hours we're down, Okay, 2 hour delay, just think of it that way, right? We lost the 2 hours, but we recovered from it, right? So the BIA gives you that spectrum, right? So that's why like the phrase is you don't put $1 million fence around a donkey. The donkey's.
I was hoping we were gonna get some clarity on that.
Right, that's just that's what they say about it, right? You know, I think that's the easiest way, like, we don't need to be the Fed or DOD. There'll never be a business case, right? We also can't be a mom and pop shop, right? And how we find that balance in the middle, right? And this process leads us in that direction.
I'll say as a parent, like just the power school thing, I think has been an awesome transition. It really went really well. You know, I like the program from a parental standpoint, like, thank God Skyward's gone. Like,
I mean, that was one of many facets why we moved to power school. I mean, I've lost hair from moving to power school, I'll tell you straight, right? Sleepless nights, many, but, yeah, that's why I just cut them off. I actually have gray hair, but, that's why it's long. But, no, it's fantastic. I mean, like,
messaging's great. It's just,
so there's so many positives that are just internal to us, the parents can't see, but like just the communication you see as a parent on that app, this makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
Right, the digital forums, absolute sense.
Yep.
Right, you know, on the teaching side, we can customize anything, which makes like a media alert for CTE, work-based learning hours, it can be slapped right in their face that you need to do this. Right, there's a graduation requirement you to meet, slap in the face, right? So you don't constantly have to search for something, run 7 reports, do a pivot table and find it, right? So it's been great. I mean,
I probably log into it 3 or 4 times a day, drive my kid nuts. Like, what'd you miss? What'd you do? But it's
I think
awesome.
that might be a good segue into like my software budget, right? Like one of my pieces of my job, right, is really relationship management at the end of the day, right? I'm in technology, but I have to talk with people, right? And the biggest thing is that having these conversations at the state level, at the federal level, and even like K-12, like I can see what products people use, what products people are asking for, right? So like there is a significant increase in my software, but these are for products that will defend us, right? Because I still beat up our vendors. So like last year, like CloudStrike cost us $157,000 a year. After 3 months of heated debates, I dropped it by 50,000, right? PowerSchool was $73,000 when Superintendent Dr. Marceau mentioned it. I got it down to 53, right? Another hat that I wear is for a nonprofit called Rhode Island Society of Technology Educators, where I actually write the response for proposals that allow K-12 districts to buy things. So I write for them for free. I don't get paid for it. I just love it. Right, and then when they all buy, we all get cheaper prices. So one of the other things I did is with our web filtering and our classroom management, it went from 33,000 to 10. Right, the contract that I helped wrote was already 40% off, and I went back for 45. Right, so like I generally enjoy this stuff, and like I keep trying to get to the state committees or these other municipalities or whatever I can. Right, because it's really a team effort. Right. The unfortunate reality is I can't grandfather in hardware, right? And someday I have to replace it. I can't grandfather in software because it's going to go away, right? So you're going to see these increases, and they are substantial. Don't get me wrong, right? But like the big things with these products is that like I can actually get rid of other products that we have, right? One of the big increases is something called VMware, and VMware allows us to have a lot of things on a really small thing. Right? It went from $8,000 to $48,000. And it's one of those things where you just can't go tomorrow and change it. Right? But I actually see it as an opportunity because in order to run VMware, you have to have servers. Servers are expensive. You need to store data somewhere. You need electricity. You need cooling. You need security. Right? So this is an opportunity for us to break our reliance or need it to move things up to somewhere else, say the cloud. We can actually start getting rid of software. But like we're in this divide between these things that like if you look at some of the products, they're like, well, that sounds kind of like the same like the other, right? But they do different point features. So there's a concept called like defense in depth, deep and onion, right? You go down the layers. It's just like physical security. we put a lock on 17 doors, they're probably gonna give up on the third, right? So the point is with the software request, right, it's to layer these things together, so they're just so pissed off at you, they stop trying.
How are the Chromebooks holding up? Are they still decent?
They are great. I mean, the ones that we buy, right, are not the traditional ones you would see at like the Best Buys and stuff, right? We buy the best hardware we can at a certain threshold, right? So the high school now is on a 14-inch. Because they mentioned that a few years back and it made perfect sense. Like, we don't want to work on that tiny little screen. So now you have YouTube, you have your internships, you have specialized programs with 14 tabs open in Spotify. Right, you need the hardware to support it, but within a degree. Like, do we need kids to be off task with 4 things or just with 1? Right, because there's a little hub there, right? And then with these digital textbooks, with the software, you need hardware to run it. So like these Chromebooks, we do get about 6 years on, right? So we now, thanks to the school committee over the years, right, we refreshed the 5th grade, we refreshed the 9th grade. When those kids matriculate to the next level or graduate, those actually all go to the elementary, right? And they're reused again. The only difference is at the elementary level, we are asking for a replacement. So right now we have iPads that are bought with the ESSER funds in 21, 22. What we'd like to do is actually make it a Chromebook that's a 2-in-1. Because of the K to 1, they're tactile, right? That's why they have the iPads. Once you start getting to 2nd and 3rd grade, you're starting to learn. So instead of buying iPads and that one, you just have the 2-in-1 you fold back up and you use. Right? So that's what you're going to see at the elementaries. Some other stuff we see at the elementaries is laptops. We bought a lot in COVID. Right? So what we're trying to do is put back some of that hardware back. So as they fail, we replace them. Right? It's the same thing with projectors. But you're not going to see any projectors in State Street right now because they're getting a new building. Right, so the biggest drivers is that business impact analysis and those software products.
Mike, if the BIA it offers a range, a budgetary range.
Yes.
What is your protocol to determine sort of where we land within that range?
So what, like the actual like lever between the things?
Yeah.
So that's more like an organizational decision because cybersecurity is not just technology, right? It is what is finance doing? What is transportation doing? What is facilities doing? How far do we want to go in? Should we even go that depth? Right? So like there's still scoping calls to determine, right? And we're also going to look at an avenue of having the same work with the town at some level, right? Because they have dependencies that we rely on, right? But then we have our own stuff that we're responsible for. Right, so it's one of those things where how do you put a dollar amount to level of risk?
Yeah.
Right, so unless you're in the industry, you can't currently do it.
Yeah. And then is there a push to, I agree with Tim, I love Power School. Is there a push to kind of ultimately have that be the thing that all the schools in our district are using? Because at the moment, there's some different apps that some classroom teachers are utilizing. And my kiddo's in elementary, she's on Power School, but not really. Like there's no information from her school that's uploaded onto that.
So I can't speak to the school practices, right? Kids are doing assignments, they're doing tasks, right? But at the high school, middle school level, they're putting them in. Right, so like just like the elementary, it's a model versus like a decibel.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a little different.
But are you referring to like teachers using Remind and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, yeah.
Yeah, or like Class Dojo or things of that nature. I really was curious if there was gonna be actual data entered into Power School from elementary.
Right, so the data would be assignments.
Right.
Right, so.
And I know that they moved to a new grading, like a new report card format. So I just didn't know whether we were headed in a direction where every kid at every school would have grades or information from their teachers entered into Power School.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I just don't control what the individual buildings do with what they're grading and how they're entering things.
Right.
I mean, they do a lot of different assignments and benchmarking and all kinds of things, and they leverage those other things that come to that.
Yeah.
But because they're on a growth model, the last 3 weeks of just like shoot to that 3,
Right,
right? So it's not like, I'm getting 85s consistently,
yeah.
right?
The kind of communications that teachers do through Classroom Dojo and Remind, is Power School capable of that?
So in that regard, we currently have that feature.
Uh-huh.
I just haven't rolled it out yet
Got it.
because there's so many other things going on right now, just making sure it works, like, Q2 just closed and we're figuring out just how we print Q2 now because it's on 3 pages,
Yeah. Yeah.
We're figuring out those little pieces, but the messaging, yeah, it's true.
Which is good, snow cancellation still work.
Yeah.
That works. I got it.
Wow.
It works.
So, yes, there is the ability, it's there, I just haven't told them where it is,
So,
right?
Duns must have figured it out, because I definitely get some messages
Yeah.
through Power School.
I mean, once they log in, it's literally on the left side saying message center.
Yeah, there's some people who figured it out, because, having a second grader, I have one, I get Class Dojo, Remind, and Power School, it's like,
So, yeah, I haven't rolled that out yet because like
It's
they're all
just- yeah, it's way
brand
too
new
much.
with grading, brand new report cards, like, class rank and GPA at the high school is incredibly, sensitive, right? So like,
that's gone, right?
Yeah, they took it down.
Yeah, I don't have that.
well, I mean, they still have to have a cumulative, right? So they haven't necessarily, the way Power School works with grades is drastically different than Skyward, right? So it's not true yet. Let's just put it that way, the GPA and be random. Now you just have last year's stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because you have semester courses which have half credits,
Right.
right? So they have a weighted one, which is earned over potential.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any earned, then it's 0 over 1. It's not gonna be, it's
Okay.
not gonna what you want,
Right.
right? So, and then of course, if the kids ask, the parents ask, they can just give them it as well. It's kind of their policy, but yes, it can.
Cool.
It will be available. They just don't know it's there yet. But yes, one of the reasons why I wanted to move to it was to get rid of the Remind, the Google Classrooms, Class Dojos, and the 40 other apps everyone signs on to
Right.
and whatnot. Like, is there self-service in the building to send out a remind, right?
Yeah.
So all the data sits in Power School. We use it for snow days and dismissals.
Yeah.
It already is configured. I just haven't had time. I don't know if the teachers have another thing they want to put on top of them right this moment.
Right.
Right, so it's more of like beginning of next year conversation, right, type of do, but yeah, we already have it.
Cool.
Right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Other questions for Michael?
Great job.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Right. Be right over there.
So while Steve is passing out the budget summaries, you may have seen them or not. I did not send them till about 3:30 this afternoon. So what Steve is passing out is a revenue and expenditure summary report and then a summary of changes. I had also sent everyone the other department reports that were scheduled for February 25th. The reason I sent those and produced these documents is on the 25th, the school committee needs to vote on a proposed budget to go to the town. So I felt we needed this information now. So if there's any questions, any changes we want to make, we would have to do that by the 25th. Right, before we look at summaries, did anyone have questions on any of the other department budgets? Or if you haven't had time to review them, then email questions, we can go through that on the 25th as well. If not, if you look at the summary page, right now, we are proposing an overall budget increase of 1.45%.
I'm sorry, I was reading something, can you repeat? I didn't hear what you said.
So I'm just gonna go through the summary page. So overall, the proposed budget as of right now for 2026 is an overall 1.45% increase. However, we do have a reduction in state aid that's based on the governor's recommended aid of $172,947. I also did not budget for fund balance. Also, tuitions from other districts currently budgeted at $57,352. For the proposed 26 budget, I currently have that at 0 because for this year, we have no tuitions from students from other districts coming in. And that would leave the request from the town for the local appropriation of $1,515,423, which is a 3.09% increase. You can see that overall, the increase, 1.45%, a total increase of $865,225 is a very, very modest increase on this size budget. However, due to reduction in state aid, if we do not use fund balance, we only have so many revenue sources, and the largest one would be local appropriation. Below revenue line, you can see the changes in the expenditures. Then the next document I have for you is just the summary of all the changes. So I start with the 25 adopted budget, and then here are proposed revenue changes. Then I do a summary of wage and benefit changes. Because on the summary sheet, you just see employee benefits as one line. So I like to point out some of the other lines.
Which are you looking at, Cindy? I'm not following you.
This one.
Okay.
So you see one of the largest overall increases is health insurance, which is a 5.71% increase. The increase in the working rates, the healthcare rates are 10%. So that factored in with staffing reductions and other plan changes shows that $390,000 of the budget increase is health insurance. So when you go below that, I now break out all of the staffing changes. So rather than looking at each FTE sheet, I've shown all of the reductions for a total reduction of 11.56 FTE on page 2, and then the additions of 5.71 FTE with a net decrease of 5.85 FTE, which the decrease in FTE and the offsetting increase would leave us with an overall decrease of $715,000. However, then we have to add in benefit changes and any contractual increases, which gets us back to the total staffing and benefit changes of $410,442. And if you go below that, I break out, so all of the site budgets, I show whatever the increase or decrease is and the percent.
Well, it's fresh here. So in the position reductions, I'm just trying to follow how it works. Cosmetology assistant of -0.6. But then as an addition, you have cosmetology teacher 0.40. What's?
Yes, so that was a shift. So the teaching staff increased, but the assistant decreased.
So it's a different position.
Yes, so
Okay.
it's actually one individual who held two positions, two part-time positions, and it's now changed based on enrollment and classroom size and the need for teaching staff.
Okay.
The one above that, community liaison, I'll just go through one by one. This was the attendance officer. This was a change in position. We had a part-time attendance officer that was funded in the general fund budget and a homeless liaison funded out of Title I. So we kind of combined those two positions.
As a community
Say
liaison.
about
So that way one person's supporting the families that are identified as homeless, but then also working with those that are struggling with attendance as well.
And this is also now a calendar year position, not just a school year position. You'll see then the reduction, the dean of students, mentioned at the high school. Then below that, the 2 grade 1, 1 grade 2, and 1 grade 3 teacher. On the next page, you'll see the health physical education teacher, Desiree mentioned. Math teacher, this 1.6 from the high school.
And how many of those are obviously the 0.6s, is that a full-time and then a part-timer that you guys were referencing earlier?
So it's budgeted a full-time and a 0.6. However, the full-time is only a current 0.8 position.
Okay, so those are the two.
So those are the
Gotcha.
two.
Yeah.
Program paraprofessional. Christina had mentioned this in her special education budget. Science teacher virtual, we had a 0.2 in the budget. There had been a staff person actually working a 1.2. They're no longer doing this, so we can remove it from the budget. A little bit difficult. So one of the positions that Desiree was talking about reducing is a social studies teacher. However, when you look at the FTE report, it's going to show as math, because in fiscal year 25, one of the grade 6 reductions should have been in social studies, and I had it in math. So that's, and that'll be, and then the technology teacher. So those are all of the reductions. Then additions, building assistant 0.71, that's at the high school. That was reduced in this year's budget, but they need that position. That was a priority.
What is that position? I'm not familiar with that title. An assistant, is that like maintenance or safety?
No.
Supporting the office staff of the clinic.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That's like admin assistant type. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, and letting students and staff in and, yep,
Okay.
that. Culinary assistant, this is a small adjustment in the FTE. And then this is the offset to cosmetology teacher. The increase in the 1.0 custodian. 1.4 special education teacher. Increase, one was the 0.4 is increasing a 0.6 to a 1.0 at the high school. And the additional full-time FTE is for the middle school. And then the student success coach in an additional 2 FTE. That is one for the high school and lieu of the dean, and 1 for the middle school. So those are all of the proposed staffing changes. So, and then below that, you will see all of the site budget changes. So one of the things that we'll be doing prior to the 25th is looking through those site budgets again and looking at any of those one-time additional items that we may be able to purchase this year, like perhaps some of the high school textbooks. So we're going to look to pare down that a little bit. And I'll be asking Mike, of course, to look at technology again.
And could textbooks or something, would that be considered something that could be fund balance? Is that kind of a one-time or?
So for some, with textbooks, while we're projecting a surplus and we do have the additional revenue this year from the indirect costs from ESSER 3, from my December report, I think it would be appropriate to just have some budget transfers for those type of items. Typically, fund balance would be more for capital or perhaps Mike's business plan.
Business impact analysis.
Business impact analysis, there you go. That might be a good use of fund balance. The other thing to mention, if you look at the legal budget and you look at the history, Obviously, we do not budget what we spend on an annual basis in legal. However, we have been able to account for it with savings from other line items. If that were to not be the case one day, I would see that as another use of fund balance, if we
But we
have
do also-
excess in legal costs.
We do also have the 2 contract negotiations this year.
We
so
do.
Might be, I was gonna ask if we would need to look at increasing legal, but now what you're saying, it would make sense that we could probably get by on what's budgeted since it seems to be over historically.
Right, because ideally, we do not want a large legal budget, unfortunately. The expenses don't have to follow that. So I guess some thoughts for the 20, before we meet on the 25th, besides reviewing all of the budgets, asking any questions, is you see where we're at overall right now. Is this where we want to be? Or does anyone have an idea of, I would maybe like to see it reduced by 250,000, or just, you know, have us take a look at the site budgets and say, what can we purchase this year? What can we pare down? I mean, we're not gonna gain a significant amount by doing that, but it will be some, because as we know, the majority of the spending is in salaries and benefits.
But we hope that our friends on the council will recognize that nearly $400,000 of this increase in student health care cost increases. I mean, it's beyond our control, just beyond our control. I mean, we're making reductions here. So I would say, you know, if the committee, if members or the committee itself are thinking there's no way I can get behind a 3% ask, it would be helpful for us to know that. We think it's a responsible ask.
Does anybody have anything like that, anything they want to see reduced or changed or something that
I just,
they agree or disagree?
quick question, on the equipment, what the 29% increase, what is that for? I'm sure it's broken up like a lot of paper.
So within that line, so that's the POA 57 series.
Yep.
So that would be furniture, software, hardware.
And if the increase is $400,000 for the benefits, have we looked for other companies or other options?
So we're partially self-funded through West Bay Collaborative. It's a collaborative with other towns, other districts. The town of Westerly is also a member. So we do receive a lot of benefits, a lot of, you know, group buying power with that. However, it's the cost. And if we were to go out to a broker for insurance, we would probably get a lot of declined quotes because they would not be able to meet the rates we have now.
I'm not understanding the numbers, but are we looking at a 1.45% increase or 3.87%?
So we're looking at a 1.45% increase in total. However, the request from the town would, if the appropriation would be a 3.09% increase, because we're reducing other revenue line items from the prior year.
Including state aid.
Right.
Gotcha. So then that's a difference of it's only 865,000 then?
Yes.
Just loosening it. Too many numbers tonight, I guess.
We're asking the town for 1.5 increase, right? 1.5 million. The local appropriation is 1,515,000. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. I thought you said we were asking for 865 and.
No.
So that's where I got it.
Right, 865 is the overall increase. However, the town request is more due to the reduction in the other revenue.
Well, I'm always one to nitpick every single line item, you guys know, but I mean, after hearing the presentations and looking at these increases, honestly don't know where we would cut.
Seems pretty lean all around.
It really does.
Well, yeah, the only place to cut really is positions.
Can I
Well,
ask?
I mean,
and then,
to get
well,
that
and then
money.
of course, then again, I will bring up that as I'm going through all of the staffing budgets, line items, our non-union and I'm not saying that, no, that people don't deserve to, that people aren't excellent and that they're not doing fantastic jobs. But the average for increases is like 3.8. I don't know if education is different, but we're at like 9 to 14 on most of our non-union job positions. That is big salary increases that are just worked into the budget. So I'm struggling with like the phenomenal people that we have working. But how do you justify a 14% increase?
So some of that is my fault, or some of that is my doing, I should say. And I am very tough about people initially, and I bring them in at low salaries to get them signed on with the understanding that they're all pretty much on probation. And then probably 90%, 95% of the ones I hire are excellent hires. And then we recognize within the next year or so that they're excellent and we want to have them here, we have to have them here. Then we start to look at comps. Like I don't look at the comps until after I decided I really want this person. But if I go and look at the comps and look at what tech directors are making or what an HR coordinator is making, we start very low. And I know, this came up last year as well. I don't think it's so much as big salary increases. I call it like corrections to get them to where they should be based on what they bring and what the comps tell us they should be. But I initially, and I'll admit this freely, am very tough. First 3 years, I think Cindy would make it 30 grand a year, right? It's not that bad, but I lowball people, get them on board, and I say, prove to me that you're worth more. And maybe we should advertise for hire, and we wouldn't have to make these adjustments, but that's what I've done.
So wouldn't it make sense to be more along the lines of merit-based pay?
I believe it is. I believe it is. I bring people in low. In rare instances where they're not getting it done, I've gone to people and said, this isn't gonna work out.
Okay.
But I've signed other people and I'll say your contract starts July 1 at this rate of pay. If you can prove to me that you're indispensable by Christmas, we can talk about what should happen from there. So an example is I hired an administrator last year. Gave him a 1-year contract only. Many people will say, I can't be bothered with it. I need 3 years. I'm not signing on. So let's talk again at Christmas time. Comes on doing an outstanding job. I said, I want to sign you to a 3-year contract starting July 1 of 2025. Now we've got them locked in and the salary will be commensurate with that. And it's not necessarily the right way or the wrong way, but it's the way I've done things.
So
So
does
if I
this
bring somebody in really
merit-based
low.
pay apply to
Sorry?
the senior teachers?
No, teachers are on contract.
Yeah, they're contracted, that's all negotiated. Non-contract, non-union people, the negotiation is with me.
Right, and I'll also add for some of the positions, as the superintendent was saying, rather than a percentage, you can look at it as like a step. Just like if you look at the teachers' steps, each change in step is not necessarily a 1% or a 2%. There are some significant jumps.
Those, if you're getting a step in the lane at the same time, and then longevity, if it all happens and lines up that way, it could be, you can see increases of upwards of $10,000. And then teachers, rightfully so, will look at it the same way, and they'll say, look, these increases that this person's getting. But that person, they've got to keep in mind, that person was hired at $60,000 a year, potentially, or maybe $70,000 a year for a 12-month position. And they're on the clock like 24/7. Like, and it's not because he's in the room, but Mike Swick is one of those kind of people. Like he's a 12-month position and I can call him on Sunday afternoon or on a Wednesday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's there and he's available. Teachers don't have that same kind of expectation. Mark McKinnon, another guy, we brought him in low. The guy's paying huge dividends to us. So,
Okay, thank you.
And I think my only thing would be just because I know we kind of got this put on us during our conversation with the town council is just about, again, like the surplus. So maybe if there are some of those things that are maybe bigger items that potentially like technology or something, maybe just a few things that might fall underneath that idea of using fund balance around might just be something, you know, at least then we can say we made the attempt, we've made the effort and looked at that as an option, to maybe adjust a little bit. But I think everything here is, I'm always a supporter because I mean, everybody presented and gave us a reasoning behind it and it's all logical. It's not ridiculous.
So the other important piece, I think, to bring to the council with use of fund balance, the school committee did just use $329,000 to get the stage 2 5-year capital plan through the ride. So we can receive reimbursement. Now the school will receive some potential housing aid reimbursement from our capital fund, but the town is going to see the majority of that revenue in their budget to offset our capital that's in their budget.
and again, we talked about this, but I'm hoping to get the council, at least some of the council members to recognize that if we're going into June with an anticipated surplus, we've got a couple of options. We could spend like crazy on things that we may not even need, just so it appears that we are going in, you know, dead even at the end of the fiscal year. Or we could allow that money to go into fund balance, which we've done for the last few years, and then tap into that for capital expenses that we don't know in the fall, when we submit our capital request to the town, whether they're gonna fund them or not. So we are taking care of a lot of our own business when it comes to capital on this side by doing things the way we're doing. We could play the game where we spend everything down and there's nothing left, but it's a game. Doesn't make sense, really.
Well, and right now we're only on, we're at what, 510,000 is a surplus? I mean, the school years, our year's over in June.
And that
So-
is a conservative
Yes.
projection,
Yep.
so.
To give a surprise, this is.
Still going through all of the teaching staff.
Okay.
There's a lot of activity there with substitutes and.
But you'd rather be 500 up than 500 down.
Well, absolutely. And plus, I mean, you can't talk, how can anybody personally look at their home budget and what we've spent or what is expected to be spent based compared to last year? There's nothing that's less expensive. So how would the schools?
Nothing's less expensive.
Nothing, right.
And that's, you know, I was surprised when I talked about it at the school committee meeting recently, and Steve, a couple days later, Steve said, you know, a lot of people heard that for the first time and it had an impact when I talked about the difference between level funding and level service.
Yeah.
We do this all the time, so it just makes perfect sense to me, but people have to recognize that level service means going to the next year with exactly what we have now. Well, that's gonna cost you more money.
Exactly.
Level funding makes that impossible.
Exactly. Yep.
So there are a few messages that I think we have to continue to get out to people. We'll talk to anybody and justify what we're doing to anybody.
Maybe a chair can write a letter to the editor.
There you go.
This is a small question, but tuition from other districts, is there a time when that becomes clear what that number will be, or does it change throughout the year? At any
Tuition's
point?
coming in or going out?
Coming in.
It could potentially change. I mean, a student could apply to attend one of our programs, or we could have a special ed program that's up to the fifth at any time during the year, and somebody could come in. And the same thing with tuitions going out, though, as we've mentioned. Kids that move from other communities, if they're in a program or a career and tech program, and they become a Westerly kid, they become a Westerly responsibility.
Right.
So that happens to us as well.
So those are just questions. Those are numbers that are constantly in flux. Like there's
Those
no
are
way to.
I call them the known unknowns.
Right.
Thank you, Cindy, Person, everybody for all of this. I mean, I really appreciate going back to having these individual meetings and being able to ask the questions. It's been great. Thank you.
These folks know their stuff. They know what they're trying to accomplish.
No, it's been awesome. We need, I know, email questions and feel like we get really fast responses. I really appreciate it.
Great.
Anybody have anything else?
The emails that we're receiving from the finance committee, are we supposed to attend the specific? Yes, the board of finance. Are we supposed to attend any of those specifically or?
Generally, we do.
Yes.
I always do.
There's two of them that they review the school budget, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
I'll
I think
take,
that
I'll
they're
take another
listed
look
up
at it. You
top,
don't know.
so.
I guess there was a potential Saturday added.
Yes,
Yeah.
Usually that's with,
Okay.
I'll take a look at it closer then. You don't need to pull it up.
so,
right now.
but the first meeting is March 3rd, which is when our budget is due, so after the meeting on the 25th, my goal would be to then have the budget book to the finance board prior to the weekend, so they're not getting it the same day that we have a meeting.
Yeah.
I'll also be updating our PowerPoint
No.
that has the different summaries, so we can go through that with the finance board as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else, I seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all members in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.